Welcome to the Carl Jackson Show, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. Guys, it is Iowa Caucuses Day. We'll be talking about that. Obviously, there was a pro-Hamas protest and actually riot that erupted right in front of the White House with chants of F Joe Biden, not let's go Brandon. They actually said the words. We're going to talk about that and what we can expect to happen from that. Nothing. Also, John Kerry is going to step down as the Climate Czar to hit the campaign trail for Joe Biden. Want to talk about that real quick. Fani Willis. Fani Willis cries racism after more Americans are discovering that she's corrupt and everything she's doing to go after Trump is absolutely corrupt because she hired her lover to go after Donald Trump, and she was benefiting from that money. So anyway, we're going to talk about that. The FAA, listen, they want to hire people that are intellectually challenged, even people that need a psychiatrist, all in the name of DEI to work on your airliners. We'll get into that. Trump attacks Ramaswamy over the weekend. What does that say about the Iowa caucuses? Oh, and great news, Republicans. There is a spending bill that looks like it's being ironed out between the House GOP leader, Mike Johnson, and the Senate Democrats. I'll just, if you're wondering how good the deal is, Senator Chuck Schumer loves it. All right. So I think that's almost enough said. All of that and more coming up on this edition, Iowa Caucuses Monday. Oh, and it's Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and America feels more racist than ever. We're getting started right now. Let's go ahead. Hey, listen, guys, please subscribe to the podcast. I just want to ask you to do that before we get started. Wherever you go to get your podcast, please subscribe or follow if that's a thing, or share. For those of you that are on YouTube and Rumble and you like to watch the podcast, I'm asking you to please review it and share it. That'll help us tremendously. And for those of you that follow us on all things social media, if you would do the same, there are plenty of you that are liking some of the new Instagram videos that Gabe is putting up, and we sincerely appreciate that. But if you would share those videos, that would actually help the numbers grow, and that'll help us to get more exposure. I'm not saying that because I'm a social media whore or anything like that. You guys know that's not how I roll, but it is important, I believe, that we get this message out. This is the greatest country that God has ever given man, and I don't want to lose it, and that's what I'm fighting for. And I know that's what those of you that are listening to this podcast, that's what you're fighting for. That's what you want, and that's regardless of if you're, whether or not your candidate is Trump or DeSantis or Vivek. I do have to say, if it's Nikki Haley, I'm not a fan. I don't, I'm just praying to God that isn't the choice. Is she better than Joe Biden? Okay. But I don't want to ask the question, is this Republican better than Joe Biden? I want to know definitively, and I don't want there to be any second guessing. But if you would, please, all things social media, if you would go beyond reposting and liking, if you would actually share some of our videos, some of our posts with other people, that would mean the world to me, and I sincerely appreciate you. All right, let's start here before I dive into the Iowa caucuses. There's a poll that's out, and now this is an outlier poll, okay? This is an AI poll, but I suspect that there's an element of truth to it. I'm going to post it up on my X space later so you can look for it. It's from a guy by the name of Robert Salvador. I've heard of him in the last couple of weeks. I even heard a couple of other podcasters talk about him, but I just kind of wanted to see more, I guess, video of what was happening on the ground in Iowa. He's got a different take on polls. It's more traditional. And it also embodies smartphone technology, social media, people clicking on Google for their candidates, which he believes that's what Democrats look at, and that's how internally they seem to get better polling than Republicans do, because we just do the old school. They're always 2 steps ahead of us. That's why they're ballot harvesting in certain areas while we sit back and just lose elections like nobody's business. So we're trying to catch up, but the problem is we're trying to play catch up. This guy may have the remedy to polling. So anyway, we will talk about that, because if his polling is true, Iowa is a much closer race than you've been led to believe. If his polling is wrong and all of the other polling is true, and that plays out this evening, for all intents and purposes, I believe the GOP primary is over. If this guy's polling is true, the GOP primary has just begun. We won't know that until tonight and, obviously into tomorrow morning. All right, now, having said that, let's play Gabe's homegirl. This is Fani Willis, and just a real quick background. You guys might recall last week that Fani Willis was busted. Her behind was corrupt as all get out. Basically, she was having an affair with her lover that is a personal injury attorney with no experience in criminal defense law or prosecution, yet he became the prosecutor without the approval of a Fulton County board that was supposed to approve his hiring. Fani Willis never even got that approval from the board for him to become special prosecutor. She hires him as special prosecutor. They're having an affair. This was discovered. I forget. I want to give somebody credit, but by some media entity that dug into this, they were having an affair. And Nathan Wade is the name of the special prosecutor and her lover. And so that media entity researched his divorce hearing paperwork, basically, or court case, and found that, Fani Willis was indeed involved in an affair with this guy. And this guy leaves his wife and files for a divorce, and immediately afterwards is hired as the special prosecutor, or vice versa. He was hired and then immediately filed for a divorce. I forget which, but nonetheless, it was suspect. All right, it was very close either way. So Fani Willis has paid this guy $654,000 to date to be the special prosecutor, despite the fact that he has no experience whatsoever as a prosecutor, and they've taken lavish vacations together with that taxpayer money. This is all a fraud. This is all a setup. And I believe, it is my opinion, that these cases should be thrown out, given the fact that this guy wasn't even legitimately hired, because a board is the one that's supposed to approve this, and it didn't happen. Instead, she hooked up her lover boy. Now that Fani Willis, and some of us have known this hasn't been the first story about Fani Willis, but as more Americans realize that she's corrupt and that she's got a witch hunt going against the former president in Fulton County, which is the Atlanta area. This is what Fani Willis had to say over the weekend in a black church. It's all about racism, folks. It's all about racism. Not that Fani Willis is corrupt. You're racist. Gabe, without any further ado, let's roll the video, por favor.
All the glory I receive, it's His grace, not a perfect me. We are at a time in history, people. Hear me on this. We are at a time in history when you can no longer sit back and just let other folks do it. You cannot expect black women to be perfect and save the world. The Lord is completing us. We are not perfect. We need your prayers. We need to be allowed to stumble. We need grace. With that kind of support, we will move mountains and do Jesus' will, stumbling all the way. So his flawed, hard-headed, and imperfect child has a message for each of you today. Please find a way to do your extraordinary, God-given assignment and make this community and the world a better place for all of his people. See, it is never about who you are. It is always about the great I am and who he is. See, we are all flawed, sinners, unworthy, imperfect, damaged, but we are qualified upon his calling. You can find common ground with people of all different ideologies if you simply commit yourself to being obedient and steadfast in your efforts and his word. If you commit yourself, God will turn your hard-headed self into the extraordinary for his kingdom. Thank you.
Oh my God. Where do I start? Why the heck would you give a skank the pulpit? Why would you give a skank the pulpit? This is the problem, sadly, by and large, with the black church in America today. This is why in 2020, the BLM movement, the fake, corrupt BLM movement, had a bigger impact on the black community than the black church has had in a century. Why would you give a skank the pulpit? I'm watching that video for the first time of Fani Willis, and so I've got a couple of takes here, all right? She talked about grace. And listen, I'm a Christian. I do believe in grace. The grace of God. I do believe in the mercy of God. You realize that she only mentioned one attribute of God, not his judgment, not his wrath, not his anger, just grace, just grace. Now, she mentioned no Bible verses whatsoever. There was no repentance whatsoever in her little, in her little monologue, if you will, in front of that congregation, her little sermon, as people sit there and clap. No repentance whatsoever. Basically, I'm a skank, accept it. I messed up. I'm a skank. I'm accept it. I haven't repented for anything, but that's okay. Accept it. I mean, this is crazy. Black women, people expect black women to be perfect. No, you're in a church. And why should people even clap to that? We don't expect black women to be perfect. The only one that is perfect is Jesus. And if you're inside of a Christian church, then you should know that. And all of the parishioners, you should feel ashamed of yourself because you should know that. No damn way you should be clapping. And I'm trying to get over the cussing this here. There's no way you should be clapping for this lady. There's no way a skank should be in the pulpit. That isn't to say that people can't mess up. I mess up. Of course we're going to mess up. We know that we sin. We know that all of us fall short of the glory of God. But what we don't do is boast on our sin. We boast about the Savior that is Jesus Christ changing us and turning us away from our sin. So how dare you sit in a pulpit when you're a freaking skank? Oh my God, man. Save the world. We don't expect you to save the world. What we expect you to do is to apply the law correctly. You weren't called to save the world. You're a freaking prosecutor. Prosecute crime so people aren't being victimized in Fulton County. How about you start there, Fani Willis? My God. Lord Jesus, help me. Gabe, I think I did pretty good not getting too highly upset over that. So I'm going to pat myself on the back. All right. I'm just tired of this. All right. If everything is racism, I want you to understand this. Hear me out. If everything is racism, nothing is racism. It's all null and void. If every freaking story about a black person is racism, nothing is racism. I'm telling you, people are getting sick and tired of it. This black racism fatigue. That's that's what's going to be happening. No one's going to be listening to when real stories of racism break. No one's going to care because you've got the Fani Willises of the world decrying everything as racism, and it isn't going to matter. If everything is racism, nothing is racism. Okay, now let's move on to this. I'm sure you guys saw this video over the weekend. These lovely pro-Hamas supporters out in front of the White House over the weekend. This video is brought to us by, I see it's TPUSA. Actually, it's mostly peaceful.live. That is our homeboy, Julio Rosas, that was just on with us. As a matter of fact, just a couple of weeks ago, go back and check out that. He was giving us a detailed account of what's really happening on the border. And I've got some news on the border because it appears that Texas Governor Greg Abbott, that conservative, it appears as though he has gaslit us yet again. So I'll talk about that briefly. But first, before we do, let's go to mostlypeaceful.live, courtesy of Julio Rosas, and play this video. Pro-Hamas terrorists pro-Hamas supporters in front of the White House. Okay. All right. So those were the pro-Hamas. And guys, it gets worse. There are other videos out there. Julio Rosas has more videos out there. They literally, one part of the barrier, they either bent, tore down, destroyed. Secret Service had to put it back up. Secret Service was out there in SWAT gear. I mean, that's how disconcerting and scary this event became. There were chants of F Joe Biden. But anyway, I guess if you're a Democrat, if you vote Democrat, if you're part of the Democratic base, nothing comes to you because last that I heard, as of late last night, no one had been arrested for this event. So if you attended the J6 mostly peaceful protest, by far, you had nearly upwards of 1 million people there and a few hundred people that got out of control. Some people that deserve to be prosecuted, but not excessively. Most of the charges should have been misdemeanor charges. But when you have people spending 10, 15, 22 years in prison, and then Ray Epstein, the guy that that's telling people, hey, let's go in, or Ray Epps, I'm sorry, telling people, hey, let's go into the Capitol and stuff like that. This guy gets away with probation. I mean, it's absolutely insane. So as long as you're a Democrat, you get to get away with rioting in the nation's capital on government so-called property. You have this prosecutor in D.C. that's going to go after J6 protesters that didn't step anywhere near the Capitol, but they were just on the grounds for the rally that day for the former President Donald Trump. Absolutely insane. So you can riot as long as you're a Democrat. That's what the message is. You're not going to be punished. Again, no arrests were made. And did you guys saw that video, right? Did you guys notice the barrier that was up around the White House? Isn't it funny how when the White House is concerned about, an invasion of the White House, they put up a barrier, but yet they refuse to do it on our southern border when last month we broke a record of nearly 300,000 illegals entering our country in 1 month? Absolutely insane. Okay, now enough on that. I want to make sure that I get to all of this stuff, man. So many stories real quick. Here's another story that I want to bring you real quick before I opine on the Iowa caucuses in this new poll that I saw that was out, an AI poll. It's not like any of the polls that you're seeing. I don't believe the polls. I do believe Donald Trump is in the lead, but I don't like being gaslit, and I don't care if that's from the left, the right, or from pollsters. I believe that people need to be involved in the American process, in the voting process. I'm starting to believe that every state should probably go towards the caucus. The caucus model. I love the fact that people have to be informed and go caucus and talk to their fellow neighbor, talk to their fellow, Iowan about their candidate and explain why and persuade others. I actually like that. I heard someone say, I think it was Steve Deace, who said, when people have commented on, listen, in Iowa, when it comes to Iowa, people will always say, or commentators will say, listen, Iowa doesn't decide the race. And he's absolutely true. Listen, I've been guilty of saying that myself. But his statement, if I recall correctly, is, well, perhaps we should. I mean, we didn't pick Mitt Romney in Iowa. Right, we didn't pick the latest failed candidates we didn't pick John McCain in Iowa because they spend 6 months vetting their candidates, and then leading up to the primary, they spend weeks and hours on end debating and persuading each other based upon policy. So maybe we need to learn something from Iowa. Anyway, I thought that was a fascinating take. All right, so real quick here, 2 stories that I want to share that go hand in hand. Let me pull up my phone for one of these. But one of the stories is this. Hat tip Breitbart. John Kerry to the rescue, retiring as climate envoy to aid Biden re-election campaign. So the U.S. climate envoy, John Kerry, which no one knows how much this fool or his staff is being paid, is stepping down from his role to work on President Joe Biden's re-election campaign. Officials briefed U.S. media outlets this Saturday. Kerry's 80. He told his staff he is now putting all his efforts into getting Biden, who's 81, back into the White House. The former presidential nominee And the Secretary of State, he was an awful one, by the way. You guys remember that red line with Bashar al-Assad? All right, he was in part responsible for it, not just Barack Obama. All right, so the former presidential nominee and Secretary of State will remain in his post until the end of winter of early spring. Oh, and for ISIS, the ISIS uprising, until winter or early spring. This according to two people familiar with him, according to Axios, which first reported that Kerry would step back. The former senator thinks Biden's reelection is the quote unquote single biggest difference that can be made this year for climate progress at home and globally. Of course it is, right? Because people aren't buying into this nonsense. You had Hertz, the Hertz rental car company that's getting rid of like a third of their fleet or EV fleet or what have you, because nobody even wants to rent those things, let alone buy them. I mean, if I had to be forced to buy an EV, I'd probably buy a Tesla. That was if my hands were forced. I think those are the only ones that look good. I kind of like Elon Musk, but I don't like them. I don't like EVs in general because I don't like the message they're sending. You're not saving the world by driving an EV. That includes Tesla. Oh, and by the way, when it comes to Hertz, part of that fleet was Tesla as well. These things just aren't selling. They're just not selling. People aren't buying it. They're very expensive, and people that have money can afford them. People that don't can't. It's really as simple as that, and they're not saving the planet. That's a total farce. If you get them or if you purchase one, because from what I understand, especially when it comes to Tesla, the power is just insane. The torque or whatever is insane. Then so be it. If you like it because of that, so be it. But please, please, please spare me the nonsense that you're saving the planet. You're absolutely not. All right. So again, Kerry will join the president on the 2024 campaign trail after spending 3 years flying around the world, telling powers, including China, that they need to cut emissions while he's been spreading emissions like nobody's business. It guy's a total joke. Despite its decision to resign, Kerry is still expected to join the globalist elites flying into the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, which begins today. Man, on MLK Day. A replacement has not yet been named, but the nominee could face a tough confirmation. I suspect there won't be a climate czar, any more climate czars. Kerry was instrumental in delivering the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement as Secretary of State. Remember, Donald Trump got us out of that nonsense, basically tying our hands while you have India and China polluting the world like crazy, and we're not doing a doggone thing about it. They're not going to do a doggone thing about it because they're not going to give themselves a disadvantage when it comes to fossil fuels, when it comes to building their economy. And again, we know that when it comes to EVs and all this kind of stuff, CO2 is a benefit. It is not a negative, right? I mean, we need, if you want more trees and greenery and nature and all of that good stuff, you need CO2. So, I mean, this is just a farce. This is basic knowledge. Now, let me couple that story with this. I think this was, I want to know what you think about this, this story, Gabe. Have you heard about this? The FAA seeks to hire people with severe intellectual and psychiatric problems in DEI push. Excuse me? FAA is seeking to hire people with severe intellectual and psychiatric problems in a DEI push. And then the question is, what could go wrong? This from BizPac Review. So the Federal Aviation Administration is actively recruiting those with, quote, severe intellectual disability and psychiatric disability for employment in a push for diversity and inclusion. Targeted disabilities are those disabilities that the federal government, as a matter of policy, has identified for special emphasis in recruitment and hiring. So the agency's website states they include hearing, vision, missing extremities, partial paralysis, complete paralysis, epilepsy, severe intellectual disability, in other words, very stupid people, psychiatric disability, I mean, people that are genuinely cray-cray, and dwarfism. Close quote. The initiative shows the stunning degree to which the Biden regime has embraced left-wing ideology, potentially imperiling the lives of air travelers by prioritizing DEI over merit. A stunning revelation that comes at a time when air safety is in the public eye after a door plug blew out on a Boeing 737 MAX 9 aircraft shortly after takeoff. And then there was more news this weekend that another Boeing plane had some type of crack in the windshield. Yes, while people were aboard. The FAA, which is under the purview of Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg himself, a diversity hire, states that its, quote, continuing mission, close quote, is to, quote, provide the safest, most efficient aerospace system in the world, close quote. The agency employs roughly 45,000 people. This according to Fox News. All right, so what is this really about? What is this really about? The FAA, again, in the headline from BizPac Review, FAA seeks to hire people with severe intellectual and psychological problems and DEI. This and the story with John Kerry have something in common. The goal is to get you to stop flying. The goal is to get you to stop traveling. The goal is to get you out of airplanes and out of automobiles. The goal is to take away your freedom. This is all about greening the world. This is the new Green Deal. It's nothing more than that. It is anti-freedom. If they can scare you out of planes, they'll do just that. That's all this is. That's all this is about. What other reason would you hire crazy people to be in charge of a piece of metal that is flying through the sky with hundreds of passengers on board? How crazy is that? Does that make any sense? Of course it does not, unless the goal is to get you fearful of flying. That's all this is about. EVs, FAA, make you scared of flying. That's what this is about. That's such a great point. I'm writing it down. I don't want to forget it. But I shouldn't. I mean, it's obvious. It's obvious. Make you scared of flying. I mean, it's absolutely amazing to me. All right, now, let's see that. Okay, so Trump attacked Ramaswamy over the weekend. All right, so it goes hand in hand with this AI poll that I have seen. Now, granted, every poll that you see on Real Clear Politics, there's an aggregate of polling. And when there's an aggregate of polling, typically polling is more accurate. However, what we saw in 2020, in 2022, and 2023, guys, listen, I have an issue with 2020. Just like many of you in this listening to this podcast. But I will say this. I will say this. Democrats knew exactly what they were doing even then. The polls did not matter to them. They went out and ballot harvested. They took advantage of the CARES Act. Trump got duped with all this Fauci, Deborah Birx, COVID stuff. He got duped there. And then so the left took advantage of that. And that CARES Act that he signed into law, they took advantage of that. They started ballot harvesting. They started doing targeted polling. Where can we go in these swing states to win? Who can we scare? Oh, black people, let's scare them. Oh, women that are pro-choice, let's scare them. All this kind. Let's scare them. And then let's go ballot harvest, because these people are probably not going to show up at the polls, but we can go to them now that this CARES Act has been signed. So let's ballot harvest. So polls since 2020 have been elusive, to say the best. All right. Or at best. Right. So I don't want to count on polls. However, they give you a snapshot in time, right? You've heard plenty of people say that, and that tends to be true. There's no doubt in my mind that Donald Trump is the clear front runner. How far ahead he is, I do not believe. And I'm not saying that Carl, you just hate Trump. No, I don't like to be gaslit, and neither should you. This doesn't make sense to me. I hate what the left of the Fani Willises of the world are doing, the communists of the Democrat Party are doing to Donald Trump. But I don't want to be gaslit. I can say everything they are doing is absolutely wrong, and it is evil, despicable, and we need retribution for it. I definitely believe that. But I can also say I don't want to be gaslit, all right? Because I believe in a fair election process all the way around. And so now, over the weekend, Donald Trump took on Vivek Ramaswamy, calling him fake MAGA. You guys know my views on Vivek Ramaswamy, so I'm not going to... Although I will say this. I appreciate how well that guy can communicate. It almost makes me upset, right? I wish Trump and DeSantis could communicate as effectively as Vivek Ramaswamy. I don't believe Vivek Ramaswamy. I don't believe necessarily that he's a man of conviction. And I could be wrong. If I'm proven wrong one day, forgive me. All right. But there's enough in his history that tells me not this go around. Right. I want him to be a little more seasoned somewhere down the line or inside of an administration or something like that. OK, maybe a different story. Get some seasoning. Make sure that you really believe these convictions and grow a track record and history and evidence of believing these particular convictions that he holds today. But Trump attacked him over the weekend, calling him fake MAGA, so on, etc., and how sly he is using his campaign to pretend like he's MAGA, all the while trying to siphon off votes. Well, even Candace Owens is out there stumping for Vivek Ramaswamy, and I suspect, I didn't know she was doing that. I just saw that over I think it was Friday, and I was like, well, I didn't know that. If you're Donald Trump, right, you're concerned. Candace Owens is a very powerful conservative figure, and she happens to be black. She happens to be the founder or co-founder of Blexit, along with Officer Brandon Tatum, right? And so if you're Trump and you're seeing that and you've been hearing, man, you know how influential Candace Owens is with younger audiences and black conservatives, you're going to get a little concerned. And she's out campaigning with Vivek Ramaswamy. Not to mention, apparently, Vivek Ramaswamy has been working his tail off like Governor Ron DeSantis. I hear Governor Ron DeSantis's thing like there's no comparison. But I hear Vivek Ramaswamy has been working his tail off, regardless of what I may think or you may think, working his tail off in Iowa and hitting some of these communities that Trump didn't perform well in Iowa. All right. So, and I just heard this too from Steve Davis. I want to make sure that I give him credit, that part of the fear from Trump's campaign is Vivek is doing better than the polls suggest, even though, I mean, I'm not saying he's like doing so great that he's going to win Iowa, but I mean, because it's a caucus. So this is why even with Iowa, you have to be iffy about the polls. But if he siphons off from anyone, it's going to be from Trump. It's going to be from younger people that love Trump. So I suspect that's why Donald Trump went after Vivek Ramaswamy, which tells me that the polls aren't accurate. Because if you're 40 points ahead, this isn't knocking them. This is just, I think it's a legitimate concern by the Trump campaign. Because if you're 40 points ahead, you're not worried about Vivek Ramaswamy that's polling at like 5% when it comes to real clear politics. But if an AI poll that I read is correct, now this is an outlier. Let me find this. All right. This is a guy by the name of Robert Salvador. He happens to be in construction. He happens to be in construction, in major construction in our state of Florida. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to siphon through this right now. Okay, here it is. And he says, poll alert, AI and tech poll Iowa Republican primary. So now this is new. So this is a guy who's been using AI in his booming construction business inside of Florida that is taking a look at polls inside of Iowa. And he's encompassing everything, the old traditional way of polling, including old school calls, but smartphones and text alert and what people are Googling and social media and all of that kind of stuff. So his AI encompasses all of that. All of these other pollsters aren't. A lot of them are stuck because they're relegated to trying to contact someone by landline still, right? Or in some cases, smartphone. How many people do you know have answered any of these polls? I don't know one. All right. And so this guy encompasses what people are doing behind closed doors as well when they're Googling, which gives him a better sense. All right. So now here's where he has the race. If this AI poll is correct, and now this is an outlier. Again, everything else has Trump just sweeping this thing, kicking everyone's booty. And I will say that it is likely that Trump is going to kick butt tonight. I just don't think the numbers will be as large. But if this poll is correct, all right, let me read it to you. All right, so this Polytech AI poll has Donald Trump, including all of the smartphones, social media, text messaging, people Google searches online. This is where he has it. Donald Trump is ahead at 38%. Ron DeSantis, a close second at 35%. Nikki Haley at 14%. Guys, don't believe the hype that Nikki Haley is in second place. Now, if I'm wrong tomorrow, I'll come on and say it. All right, but I don't believe the hype that Nikki Haley is in second place in Iowa. I don't. Now, in New Hampshire, I think that's a different story. A lot of the big guns are helping her out there, but I don't believe she's in second place in Iowa. I simply do not. And from what I'm hearing, it's a lot of liberals and independents that support Nikki Haley in Iowa. The problem is, are they going to caucus in nearly negative 10-degree weather for Nikki Haley when they're not even Republicans are biggest supporters of Nikki Haley? So there's no real conviction apparently on the ground in Nikki Haley. It's kind of like, if you're going to caucus in the cold, you're going to caucus for Donald Trump. All right, let's be real. His supporters will walk over glass for him, right? His most ardent supporters. Ron DeSantis apparently has a phenomenal ground game, better than what Iowa has ever seen in the state. But this is a different election cycle with all of these persecutions going on of Donald Trump. So we'll have to see if that conventional wisdom pays off for DeSantis. But according to this poll, it is. All right. So 35% for Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump at 38%. And then you have Nikki Haley at 14% and Vivek Ramaswamy at 13%. All right, which says Vivek is doing better than people expect, and he can siphon off from Trump. Let me just read something real quick, because this is what the Real Clear Politics polling aggregates suggest, and I want to make sure I bring those to you, because I'm not trying to be a hype man. I'm just trying to give you a different perspective of a guy that's mixing traditional and modern, traditional ways and modern ways in order to get more accurate polling. But if I'm looking at the Real Clear Politics average right now, and on Real Clear Politics, they have Trump ahead 52.5%, with Nikki Haley at 18%, Ron DeSantis at 15.7%, and Ramaswamy at 6%. I don't believe the Nikki Haley thing at all. Now, I could be, I'll be proven wrong today. If I'm wrong, I'll be proven wrong today, right? Or tonight. I don't believe that at all. How can you have people that are not convinced they want you to be your candidate, their candidate? They're not necessarily in your party, but they're going to go out in freezing temperatures to vote for you in bad weather conditions. We'll see. All right, we'll see. But anyway, I wanted to give you that poll, and that's more in line with what the polls are reading even nationally. Trump nationally has an even bigger lead over all of these guys. But again, national polling doesn't matter if there's an upset in Iowa, if there's an upset in New Hampshire. It's going to start going state by state. And then the danger that Trump has to worry about, that's why I believe he was going so hard after Vivek Ramaswamy, is if the narrative that Trump is inevitable dies down. I think the Trump campaign is in trouble. If he wins a convincing victory tonight, I think everybody else is in trouble. I think it's virtually over. So that's what we're dealing with. That's the skinny. I want to make sure that I've covered everything. Oh, last thing, and we'll close this thing out again. Oh, guys, please help out my sponsor, Mike Lindell. You guys may not have heard the news that he's been canceled on Fox News. MyPillow.com. Use the promo code Carl, C-A-R-L. All right, go to the Radio Podcast Square. Use the promo code Carl Pulfadud. All right. We'd appreciate that, or give them a call, 800-858-0263. There are all types of deals available to you right now, even the Giza Dream Sheets that are low as $29.98, I believe, or $29.99. I mean, My Pillow slippers, the My Pillow 2.0, bed sheets, towels, bathrobes, dog beds, you name it, mypillow.com. Use the promo code Carl. Last thing, because this was very disappointing, and I should say expected. I shouldn't even say that it's disappointing. I should have expected this, but just real quick, let me find it. Okay, a deal has been reached. This, according to CBS News. A deal has been reached on short-term funding bill to avert the government shutdown, congressional leaders say. And again, guys, it's not a shutdown, it's a reset. During a alleged shutdown, all that stops functioning are the non-essential parts of the federal government. In other words, the parts of the federal government that we don't need. All right. But a deal has been reached on a short-term funding bill that would avert a partial government shutdown, congressional leaders announced yesterday. So the continuing resolution would fund the government through March 1st and March 8th. This, according to statements from House Speaker Mike Johnson, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. The current funding deal, which went into effect in November, funds some federal departments through January 19th and others through February 2nd. So in other words, guys, you have Speaker Mike Johnson that does not intend to cut federal spending. Now, I get it. Most people will tell you, Carl, this is an election year. I've told you this before. Republicans don't do anything in an election year. Guys, this year is different, and you know it's different. We have the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, being persecuted in these fake court hearings across the country. This is insane. With him being kicked off the ballot, you have illegal aliens invading this country like nobody's business, and including Speaker Mike Johnson, the swamp in Washington, D.C., wants to keep the status quo and continue to fund everything. Don't use the power of the purse to leverage anything. This is insane. Man, I'm telling you, Republicans, you better grow a spine. You better grow a spine. Guys, and I no one else will say this. No, you'll only hear it here. And don't turn off this podcast. You know that it's true. All of these rhinos are starting to back up and endorse Donald Trump. Be smart. Ask yourself why. And then if he does get in, what will they do? You think they'll act like conservatives all of a sudden? Or do you think they'll still act like rhinos? All right, guys, appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show. Again, please subscribe to the podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble, por favor. And please review us. If you're on YouTube and Rumble, give us that 5. We need it. That'll help us, help our names get out there. We certainly will appreciate that. Don't forget to support our sponsor as well, MyPillow.com, Mike Lindell, with fabulous products. And guys, again, I appreciate you tuning in. Oh, follow me on all things social media. I'm on Instagram. We're on X. We're on True Social Getter. Wherever I am at The Carl Jackson Show is where you can find me on social media. And until next time, do not grow weary doing good. God bless you.